A great opening line is like a door creaking open into a new world, one that you're eager to step into. It has to do more than introduce a story. It has to spark curiosity, it has to set expectations, and it has to promise adventure. And in science fiction, where worlds and ideas are often complex and strange, the first line becomes even more crucial. Join me today as we break down the power of opening lines in science fiction, looking at how they hook us from the very first word and pull us into the story. On Tuesday, a genetic materials test confirmed my guilt, but of course this confirmation was only a formality, and on Wednesday I was beheaded. My crime was adultery. This is a pretty brutal opener. It's concise but carries a lot of freight. Our attention is immediately grabbed. Beheading as a punishment is bad enough, but for adultery? That is a stark and dystopian concept. The tone is set, and the tone is grim. In just a few words, we know we're in a society with a rigid moral code and a justice system to go with it, where guilt may be predetermined. By choosing a first-person perspective, Adam Roberts is giving his protagonist a direct, almost resigned tone, suggesting that he's accustomed to the harshness of his world. The dry, almost casual delivery of the line contrasts with the horror of the situation, a darkly ironic effect. Why such a severe punishment? What kind of society operates this way? How does the protagonist survive to tell his story, without a head? I think it's a striking and memorable opening line, a great hook, shocking and thought-provoking in equal measure. Later, as he sat on his balcony eating the dog, Dr. Robert Lang reflected on the unusual events that had taken place within this huge apartment building during the previous 3 months. It's deliberately jarring. Immediately we know that we're not in everyday territory. The world of the novel must have undergone a dramatic and unsettling transformation. Cannibalizing a pet is a powerful symbol of collapse. What circumstances could lead an educated man like Dr. Lang to this point? The phrase reflected on the unusual events is an ironic understatement. If eating a dog is part of his normal routine now, what horrors must have preceded it? The calm, almost elegant structure of Ballard's sentence makes the gruesome act stand out even more. The entire book is freeze-dried in this one sentence, encapsulated, awaiting rehydration to be unfurled like a Fibonacci sequence. The information is all there. We merely need to read on, our interest suitably piqued. And for me, this is the very essence, the job of an opening line of a book, particularly of a science fiction book. We need to have our paradigm upended, our world skewed. In the following paragraph, Ballard expands. It was here, if anywhere, that the first significant event had taken place, on this balcony where he now squatted beside a fire of telephone directories, eating the roast hindquarter of the Alsatian, before setting off to his lecture at the medical school. What an image! I mean, it's a bit dated now. You wouldn't be able to build a fire of telephone directories because they don't exist now. He'd have to be using his collection of science fiction books or something. But anyway, eating a pet dog equates to the fall of civilization. It's post-apocalyptic even. But no, Dr. Lang has lectures to deliver after his breakfast, his dog breakfast. We're compelled to read on. How could anyone put it down? How did things reach this point? What kind of breakdown took place inside the high-rise? And will the novel move forward from here? Or will it rewind to show the descent into savagery? The contrast between civility and savagery is the key to the novel, and this first sentence encapsulates that perfectly. It raises immediate questions about how society inside the high-rise collapsed, making it an irresistible hook. My next opening line is less direct perhaps, but does a similarly excellent job, in my opinion, of teeing up the book. Although I am writing this in the year 1877, I was not born until 1921. Neither the dates nor the tenses are an error. Let me explain. So says Hodge Backmaker, the narrator of Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. We get an immediate temporal paradox. By preemptively addressing our potential confusion, Moore establishes an engaging and conversational tone for his narrator. We shouldn't be worried. Hodge is going to straighten us out. In short order, within the next 2 or 3 paragraphs, Ward Moore doubles down, teeing up the central premise of the book, with Hodge going on to tell us Grandpa lost an arm on the great retreat to Philadelphia after the fall of Washington to General Lee's victorious army of Northern Virginia. Hodge then lives in a different world to ours, where the Confederate forces won out and the rump of the United States is left to its reduced circumstances. The bulk of Bring the Jubilee is something of a coming-of-age tale for Hodge, of him making his way in this world, giving us really beautifully written glimpses of life in this backwater New York City. That temporal parenthesis that Ward opens in the first sentence is duly closed, a meditation on historical events and their turning not on heroics or big decisions, but on an accumulation of minor happenstance. The opening line hints at this central premise. History is malleable and time travel has unintended consequences, exploring whether individuals can change historical events or if they're bound by predetermined forces. I think it's a strikingly effective opening. The paradox draws us in. We're eager to learn how and why the narrator exists in a past before his own birth, whilst the statement itself serves as an elegant summary of the book's premise. There are disaster books and there are disaster books. Some major on the disaster itself and some on its aftermath or the consequences. With Seveneves, Neil Stephenson deals with the disaster in the opening sentence. The moon blew up without warning and for no apparent reason. It couldn't be more direct or unembellished, mirroring the suddenness of the event itself. It's the moon, so it's a disaster on an epic scale, and it's fricking blown up. This cannot be good. And without reason, too. There's intrigue and mystery right there. We're curious. In fact, no real attempt is made in the book to explain why. Shit, in this case, just happens. And this allows the entire focus of the story to be about survival. The entire plot of Seveneves stems from this pivotal moment. The moon blowing up is just the first in a series of escalating threats. There follows a slow-motion disintegration, repeated collisions between moon fragments, resulting in more and more fragments and more collisions, with disastrous and rather final consequences for all life on Earth. It's now a race against time to preserve as much life as possible. Where is Noah when you need him? The International Space Station has to serve as the arc of this tale, and it's clearly not big enough for the billions of people down below. This is about saving the critical few and the DNA of a select group of others and their animal chums. Seveneves tells this tale from the perspective of the hardy crew of the ISS and from the perspective of the even hardier people who come to hurriedly expand it. Seveneves is amongst my favourite science fiction books. It's a popcorn comfort read of epic proportions, and I like to geek out at the detail that Stevenson goes into, the plausible solutions to the many problems that arise. There's some politics and power plays thrown in to keep things real. All of this unfurling from that exciting and yet matter-of-fact opener. The moon blew up without warning. It's a perfect opening for a hard science fiction novel. It's direct, it's shocking and instantly engaging, and it delivers a world-altering event in a single sentence. It was a pleasure to burn, to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed, with the brass nozzle in his fists, with this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head. It's another stark declaration. It's striking and unsettling. Burning is typically associated with destruction, and yet here it's framed as pleasurable, subverting our expectations, upending our image of a fireman as a heroic saviour of lives, a dampener down of burning buildings. Instead, Bradbury makes them an instrument of flaming justice in a twisted future where knowledge and the written word are forbidden by the totalitarian government of the day. The tone of the opening line is intense, it's dark and almost hypnotic. Fahrenheit 451 explores censorship and the suppression of knowledge through book burning. By opening with this line, Bradbury immediately signals his theme to us, the reader. The imagery in that opening line is visceral. Things are eaten, they're blackened and changed by the fire. Fire is not just a tool, but a consuming force, a transformation through destruction. The metaphor of the great python with venomous kerosene paints fire as a dangerous living entity. It reinforces the idea of burning as something powerful and aggressive, mirroring Montag's initial mindset. Montag, after all, begins the story fully embracing his role as a fireman who burns books. The people in this society do not read books. They don't enjoy nature. They don't spend time by themselves or think independently or have meaningful conversations. Instead, they drive very fast, watch excessive amounts of television on wall-sized sets, and listen to the radio on seashell radio sets attached to their ears. In this strange, or perhaps it's not so strange, world, such literature as survives lives on in the memories of the book people, a national network of book lovers. Fahrenheit 451 is a paean to the value of great literature, of the written word, yes, but also to the essential need for the time to enjoy it. Bradbury's opening is a masterclass in grabbing attention. It combines shock value, thematic depth, and powerful imagery in just 6 words, immediately drawing us into Bradbury's dystopian world. Before we look at the next few opening lines, let me tell you that my good friend Whitney over at Secret Source of Storycraft also has a video out looking at opening lines. So when you finish watching me, and only then, you can head over there. I'll put a link somewhere in the comments or in the description, or a card perhaps. It was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. It's a famous opening line. Do you recognise it? A bright, cold day in April is nothing too unusual, so far so ordinary, but then Orwell drops a big clue right at the final word of this opening sentence. Clocks, at least analogue clocks that strike bells to mark the passing hours, do not use 24-hour clocks. They all use the 12-hour cycle that most of us are familiar with in our everyday lives. Orwell then is not referring to the 24-hour clock, unusual and somewhat unsettling though that might be. He's in fact referring to a saying, a proverb, the 13th stroke of the clock, which is intended to point out something that's gone wrong, but more importantly to call into question everything that has gone before, everything previously believed. The incorrect 13th stroke of the clock should make us doubt the credibility of the previous 12. One clock behaving this way would be bad enough, but it's the clocks plural. The clocks were striking 13. Many, presumably all of the clocks, are wrong, all in doubt. Orwell is signposting that statements of truth in this society should be called into question. We are thus subtly encouraged to confront an altered world right from the start. Our expectations are disturbed, hinting that something major is amiss in the novel's setting, despite the more naturalistic words that come before. If we're alive to the signal, we're primed to question the nature of the society that's presented, where even the most basic rules are subject to distortion. But by who or by what? From the moment that we meet Winston, we see a man trapped in a society where reality is dictated by the party, where even the most basic concepts are under manipulation. It's a disorienting and odd opening line which sets us up for the unsettling journey ahead. It draws us into a world where the very fabric of reality is controlled by an omnipotent party, a disjointed world, continually shifting under the party's watchful eyes. Just that one sentence, and really it's just that final word, subtly but powerfully captures the theme of manipulation and control in 1984. I lost an arm on my last trip home, my left arm, and I lost about a year of my life and much of the comfort and security I had not valued until it was gone. So says Dana as she opens her telling of the strange events set forth in Octavia Butler's Kindred. The sentence is arresting from the very first words. Losing an arm is a dramatic and unusual event, not something that happens every day, raising immediate questions. How did this happen? What does last trip home mean? We are intrigued. The detached, almost casual way that Dana states such a traumatic event adds to its impact. Instead of an emotional outburst, she delivers a blunt, concise statement that makes the loss feel even starker. Dana is a confident black woman living in the mid-1970s, and she's transported suddenly and without warning to 1815. A boy is drowning and Dana saves his life. And this is but the first time that the cosmic ties that bind Rufus and Dana call her back into the past to intervene, to preserve Rufus from some other ghastly fate. This is already an interesting premise for a story, but of course Dana is black, a modern woman, and this is the first half of the 1800s in the south of the USA on a plantation that uses slave labour. There's a rich opportunity for conflict, for misunderstanding, and for loss and pain. The phrase last trip home subtly suggests time travel without really explaining it outright. Readers unfamiliar with the book won't know yet that home refers to her return to 1976 from the 19th century, but it immediately establishes that Dana's journey is not a simple one. Beyond the physical loss, Dana speaks of losing time and comfort and security. And this foreshadows the novel's themes, how personal and historical trauma can reshape identity, how the past can strip someone of agency, and how survival comes at great cost. I really enjoyed Kindred when I read it last year. It was my first Butler, and I will be reading more. I had reached the age of 650 miles. This opening line immediately sparks curiosity. The phrase 650 miles creates an unfamiliar, almost surreal sense of measurement. It's jarring, suggesting that this inverted world operates under very different rules from our own. In conjunction with the title, it's immediately clear that we're dealing with a world of significant strangeness and uncertainty, which sets the tone for the novel. In a story where the city moves along tracks, this 650 number becomes not just a personal age or a milestone, but an integral part of the city's journey. It serves as a clever piece of foreshadowing, aligning Hellman's personal growth with the city's movement, both of which will unfold in the novel. The line's detached, almost matter-of-fact tone contrasts with our likely reaction to its strangeness. This establishes the strange atmosphere that permeates the novel. We want to know more about the significance of 650 miles. How does this number relate to the city or to the society? Our questions align perfectly with Hellman's own curiosity and unease, creating a seamless connection between the character's journey and our immersion in the story. It's a great opening, and it's efficient too, highly effective at pulling us into the world of the novel, offering just enough to intrigue and to encourage further reading. Job done. When a day that you happen to know is a Wednesday starts off by sounding like Sunday, there is something seriously wrong. This opening line establishes a sense of unease and disorientation right from the start. By describing a day that feels wrong, it mirrors the confusion and the chaos that will unfold through the story. This line subtly hints that the protagonist is about to experience a world that has dramatically shifted on its axis, adding to the suspense. The tone is set then. It suggests that the laws of normality are already beginning to unravel, which is a key theme in The Day of the Triffids, where the natural order of things is upended by the blindness of humanity and the dangerous Triffids. The concept of a day feeling out of sync with the usual rhythm is something that most of us can relate to, but the unsettling aspect of it being seriously wrong pushes the idea into the realm of the surreal. It draws us into the apocalyptic setting without needing to explicitly reference the disaster that's yet to come. We want to know, of course we do, why everything feels wrong, what is causing the confusion, and what will happen as a result. It's a clever way to begin a story, drawing us into the narrative with a sense of mystery and of anticipation. It's an intriguing opening to what's still one of my favourite books, and certainly my favourite John Wyndham. The sky above the port was the colour of television tuned to a dead channel. Gibson immediately paints a striking, unsettling image. By comparing the sky to the static of a dead television channel, it evokes a sense of desolation and emptiness, bleak and artificial. It's an image rich with implications of lifelessness and static, suggesting a world devoid of vitality, perfectly setting the tone for the cyberpunk future that follows, a world where technology and media dominate. Even the sky, a symbol of openness and nature, is framed, in this case, through the lens of technology. The description of the sky gives the environment an artificial, manufactured quality. It implies noise and a lack of meaningful signal, perhaps reflecting the alienation of the protagonist, Case, who exists in a world where he's cut off from cyberspace and living in a purposeless haze. Natural beauty has been eroded by corporate and technological excess. The central metaphor, a blend of human perception and manufactured device, a blurring of man and machine where technology is both a prison and a pathway to transcendence. It's gritty and dark, the detached tone reminiscent of hard-boiled noir fiction, an influence on Neuromancer for sure. In this story, Case is the world-weary protagonist drawn into a wider conspiracy. Neuromancer's opening line is an effective hook, using strong visual imagery to introduce the novel's world and themes whilst establishing a tone of dystopian decay and technological dominance. It's both an artistic choice and a thematic signal to the reader about what to expect from the narrative. And there you have it. In my view, some of the most unforgettable opening lines in science fiction, each a tiny masterpiece that sets up entire worlds. These lines don't just start the story, they pull us into these new worlds, challenge our perceptions and set the stage for adventures that we'll never forget. Let me know in the comments which opening lines have stuck with you for the longest. Don't forget to check out Whitney's video on the same topic. And as always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye for now.